This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
This is the Cats Roundtable with John Catsimatidis.
Everywhere around the world, they come to America. Every time that flag's unfurled, they come to America.
Good morning, New York. This is the Cats Roundtable. John Catsimatidis here, Sunday morning. We have George Venizelos, former FBI Assistant Director in Charge, to tell us about New York City and keeping it safe. Rocco Lesatorsa, maybe you have oil heat or gas heat now. Well, so he'll tell us. Jesse Arms, the Manhattan Institute. George Barella, Senator, on things going on in Albany. Congressman Peter King, Steve Cates on what's going on up in the skies, John Terrett on the markets, Linda Bonvie, Randy Mastro, first deputy mayor. He was acting mayor for the whole week. And what does he think? And Governor David Paterson on his opinion of how the meeting went between President Trump and Mondami, the mayor-elect. And let's start off with Mike Stoller on the Real Estate Report.
Good morning, this is Mike Stoller for the Stoller Real Estate Report. What's happening in the residential market in New York City? I'm not an expert, but I brought an expert here today. I have the president of Brown Harris Stevens Development Marketing, Steve Kligerman, to tell us what's going on. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
Okay, so let's talk about different markets around the city in the rental market and then the condo market. Talk about the rental market.
Well, the rental market, Michael, has since COVID passed, let's say, has seen a tremendous resurgence. If you remember, during and right after COVID, vacancies were up. Everyone was giving deals on rent. People were basically begging their tenants to stay in their apartments. Well, fast forward 4 years, and vacancy levels are at their lowest they've ever been. New construction in rental units is thriving, and the rental market is absolutely exploding. Now, for consumers, that's not necessarily the best thing because it means that rents are high, but there's a lot of really quality rental product out there. It's just a matter of being able to afford it. Rents in new construction are now anywhere between $100 and $125 a square foot.
So why don't we put that, what does that equivalent in for a one-bedroom, two-bedroom, and studio, so on? So
studios, basically, in any new building are starting between $3,700 and $4,000, going up to about $5,200. One-bedrooms will start in the $5,000 range and go as high as $7,000, even $8,000 a month. Two-bedrooms will start in the high $6,000s, low $7,000s, and go all the way up to $10,000, $11,000 a month. And then if you're lucky enough to find a three-bedroom rental, those will be $12,000 a month and more. And these are in highly amenitized, brand new buildings with, a full service staff, 10, 20, 30, 40,000 square feet of amenities. It's like living in a luxury hotel.
Okay, what about the other market?
So the other market being kind of the non-luxury market?
Yes.
So the non-luxury market, you're going to be studios, again, still into the low 3,000s to mid 3,000s, one bedrooms from 4,000 to 5,000, two bedrooms starting at 5,000 to 6 or 7. Those will be more of your older buildings, kind of like, your first apartment out of college. Maybe it's in Murray Hill, or maybe it's down in the financial district.
Let's talk about opportunities around the city. The Upper East Side and the West Side are important topics.
Well, the Upper East Side has seen probably the most construction we've ever seen on the Upper East Side at one time. The Upper East Side
in both the rental and the condo?
Both rental and condo. There are a number of developers, Mickey Naftali being the most notable, who has developed a number of buildings, condos on the Upper East Side. Those buildings, some of them are Robert A.M. Stern designs or other notable architects, are averaging in the high $2,000s to $3,000 a square foot. These buildings are highly amenitized. They have very large apartments catering more towards the empty nester or families of some sort that are looking to be near the private schools. And because there was no inventory in the Upper East Side for so long in new construction, and because of the Second Avenue subway construction, which really didn't just impact Second Avenue, it impacted all of the avenues because of the congestion that it caused. What you're seeing now is the benefit of the Second Avenue subway being completed and the neighborhood coming together. And you've got tremendous opportunities on the Upper East Side for housing, anywhere from mid-block buildings that are selling in the $2,000 square foot range all the way to the super tall towers that are getting $3,000 a foot and up.
What about the Upper West Side, which is a tough market because there's no development land?
The Upper West Side is always the most constrained marketplace. Now, back in, I'd say, 2015 to 2020, you did see a lot of construction on the Upper West Side, but it still paled in comparison to the rest of the city. The Upper West Side recently, Mickey Naftali launched the building earlier this year, the Henry on West 84th Street. That building has performed incredibly well, averaging slightly over $3,000 a square foot, mostly large apartments. They have 2 big townhouses that they're selling. I believe the building's over 65% sold, and it's not even occupiable yet. The Upper West Side is historically inventory low. It's also, by square footage, kind of the smallest neighborhood in New York City, right? So, but it's highly desirable. You have a lot going on, what I would call the southern end of the Upper West Side, where Extel developed 50 West 66th Street. They're going to be developing the Disney site, which is rumored to be, over 500 units, right? And I'm sure it's going to be an incredible development. We're working on a project in the West 80s that's going to be a boutique building with 3, 4, and 5 bedroom apartments that are some of the best layouts I think I've ever seen. That's going to be a tremendous addition to the Upper West Side as well. But it continues to be in high demand because it's a beautiful neighborhood. And it doesn't, even though it's in the heart of the city, it doesn't feel congested.
I'd like to thank Steve Kligerman for being here.
It's my pleasure. Always a pleasure to see you, Michael.
The Cats Roundtable.
What the heck is happening with the windmills? With us today is Linda Bonville, and she's an investigative reporter. Now, there are people that say the windmills is good, but what is it doing? What damage is it doing to the shore? Well, let's let her say. Linda Bonville, give us a report.
Hi, thank you so much. It's an environmental travesty what's going on with the construction and at some point operation of these offshore wind areas. It's kind of snuck in under the radar. People weren't paying attention. This has been looked at and analyzed. We had in New Jersey, we had what they call the Blue Ribbon Panel in 2006, goes all the way back there. And they determined we don't know enough. We need to know more. What will happen to the environment, to the marine mammals? And they haven't learned that much more along the way, except for the fact that these things are being constructed. There's 5 major offshore wind areas currently under construction. And something that happened quite recently that I think you may know about, that I just wrote about, and that is the amendments, the 11th hour amendments to 37 East Coast offshore wind leases between Christmas Eve and January 16th, making them extremely difficult to suspend any of these or cancel these leases. So
this was done during the last week or two of the Biden administration?
Yes, exactly. Yes, it was. And it was almost accidental to find it because they didn't have these amended leases in the usual place that people go who are investigating or checking on these things. They were sort of hidden away. And if you look at them, there were several key provisions made that are outrageous. not legal, according to attorney involved in the case. Two groups have filed a petition to have these amendments done away with, Green Oceans and Save LBI. And I spoke with the attorney who filed that petition, and he said it was totally done illegal the way it was handled. It didn't have any of...
I mean, these windmills, in case people forgot, tell them the damage that they're doing to the shoreline. Tell them that how much increases it's going to cost on energy costs.
And there's no doubt that it will totally increase energy costs. It's the most inefficient way to generate electricity. It won't generate that much, and it uses huge amounts of fossil fuels to produce these things. Plus the fact, something I've been reporting on for a while, to take this energy from the individual wind turbines, they go to an offshore substation. It's a very hot, volatile process, and it's subject to fires, to explosions. So they have to use a chemical called sulfur hexafluoride to try to prevent explosions in these offshore substations. And of interest, sulfur hexafluoride, also known as SF6, happens to be considered one of the biggest greenhouse gases out there, worse for the environment that you can have. And that has to be, it's also used in fossil fuel substations. But this is the whole picture they're painting of this is that it's green, it's clean. And that is not the case. It produces an extreme amount of damage to the environment. What it does to commercial fishing is outrageous. I think Bonnie Brady has spoke with you quite a bit about that. And what it does to marine mammals, it's an outrageous environmental assault.
Understood. And I hear energy numbers from some of my friends in Long Island and in New Jersey. They could energy costs go up 200, 300, 400%.
I've heard that. Yes. It's most ridiculous, inefficient way to produce electricity and the most expensive. And I think that's been...
And these are the people that's saying it's pro-environment to get wind energy, but it actually does harm to the environment.
It does harm to the environment. It is not efficient. And in every BOEM environmental impact statement, which is a document that must be produced to get all the permits available for these projects, there will be a statement somewhere that will say that offshore wind on its own will have no effect on climate change. So if they're doing it for climate change, it has no effect on climate change. It's a complete, it was sold to us very sort of under the cover of COVID. It came in and people really weren't paying attention, even though this has been going on for some time. And it wasn't until 2023 when we started seeing the extreme strandings of whales all up and down the coast that people started to wonder what could be causing this? What's going on now that wasn't happening before? And that's when I think a lot of people learned about what they were doing.
Understood. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Linda. How do you pronounce your name? Bonvie?
Bonvie. And
Linda
I have
Bonvie.
a Substack that has a lot of information about it, and that's found at lindabonvie.substack.com. I do an article about once a week on offshore wind.
lindabonvie.substack.com.
That's it.
Thank you so much for coming on, and please keep us informed. You have my cell number. You have our WABC, and let us know what the heck is going on.
Okay, I'm doing a lot of extra research into these lease amendments that were done at the last gasp of the Biden administration, so I hope to learn more.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the Cats Roundtable. We'll be right back right after this break. Welcome back to the Cats Roundtable. With us today is Governor Patterson, and I'd like to know what he feels about the meeting that happened on Friday between Mayor-elect Maldami and President Trump.
John, as sure as I'm talking to you, I think President Trump's advisors advised him to just don't give Mamdani any chance to be appreciated where he's not appreciated. President Trump, in response, basically treated Mamdani like he was his own son and said, I'm going to do everything to try to help him. He was magnanimous. He was dynamic. He was articulate. And Mamdani answered back with some support for President Trump. I wish I was at that rally that they were having where the people who voted for Trump were in Queens, where Mamdani went back and met with them to ask them what it was about voting for President Trump they liked so much, and that they said because he could bring us affordability and he could keep the city safe. And Mamdani was saying, I can do the same thing too. It was one of the most shocking, and I mean in a positive way, completely, I thought, honest situations where two men who had said a lot about each other got in the same office, and when they came out, they found they had more to agree with as Americans than to fight over.
And he did say, I think New York City is going to have a great mayor, to quote Donald Trump. And he also said, I think New York City is going to have a great mayor. I mean, he said that twice.
He certainly did. And I think Mamdani was quite gracious through the whole process. Sometimes people who have these, far-reaching left or even right views, once they get in front of a microphone, they want to be antagonistic. He could not have been more conciliatory. I thought I was watching a meeting at the UN.
Well, Governor Patterson, let's give it time, and I hope whatever's good for New York, I think we both agree.
We both agree, and I think we both want to honor the two men for showing their capacity to talk to each other as they did on Friday.
With us today is Congressman Peter King. Well, Congressman Peter King, you guys had a big success in common sense in Nassau County. So what is next?
Well, I'll tell you, it was a great victory. The rest of the country, Republican numbers started to slip in the last few days of the campaign, whatever the reasons were. But here in Nassau County, Joe Cairo and Bruce Blakeman, they kept going right to literally 8:59 on election night. They were all out there, constant with mail, with phone calls, with knocking on doors, with emails, text messages, everything, and getting out their friends and neighbors to vote. And Bruce won a 56% victory. And there are 110,000 more Democrats in Nassau County than Republicans. So for him to win, he had to get almost the entire Republican vote and a good part, and a solid majority of the independent vote, and also a significant number of Democrats. And he did it. He got it done. And so I think Bruce, again, has to be considered for other office if he's interested. To me, he has the executive ability, and he's shown the ability, to get things done.
And he won a decisive victory along with the DA, her name Ann Donnelly?
Ann Donnelly is a terrific DA, and that victory was as important as anyone. And we have to be especially on our guard because God knows what's going to happen in New York with Mamdani. It's really important that we have a solid police commissioner, a solid county executive, and probably most important, a solid district attorney.
It looks like we have a new mayor. We all hope for the best.
And we hope for. I think I'm still somewhat pessimistic. Having said that, it was a very promising, positive sign that he's kept on Jessica Tisch as the police commissioner. Jessica Tisch, I first met her when she was, only in her 20s, I guess. She was just out of law school, and she was working with Ray Kelly down at One Police Plaza. And that's when Ray had set up the most effective counterterrorism program in the country. She was an integral part of that, working with him. And she was right from the start. You could tell she was very pro-police and also incredibly intelligent and very, very hardworking. And I guess she's been in now almost 2 years as police commissioner, and maybe a year and a half, and she's done a great job under Eric Adams, and I think it was very smart for Mamdani to keep her on. Now, I hope he doesn't interfere with her. I hope he doesn't let any of his more radical advisors try to intrude into the police department, because we have to make sure, not just on the hard crimes like felonies, murders, rapes, but also the quality of life crimes. They're important. If you have public urination, and if you have people spitting on the sidewalk, if you have people just hanging out on street corners, it may not be a serious crime per se, but it creates an atmosphere and a climate which encourages crime. And I know that Jessica Tisch is absolutely committed on that to have a strong quality of life program. And I hope the new mayor goes with that. If not, it's going to be, we're going to see some problems at between One Police Plaza and City Hall. But I think this is a positive first step. But getting back to Bruce, I think Bruce, he has done a great job. He just got reelected, but and we would hate to lose him here in Nassau County. But I think it's important for the state to at least take a look at him. State Republicans take a look at Bruce, see what his chances would be, whether he would be a stronger candidate or not than Elise Stefanik, who I have a great regard for. I work with Elise. I say nothing negative about Elise, but I think it can be healthy for the party, not to kill themselves in the primary, but to have a healthy look over the next few months, or maybe next month, 2 months, to see whether or not they think that Bruce would have more to offer, coming from Nassau and Suffolk, which are the largest Republican votes in the entire state, and then also the fact that Bruce, I think, would run fairly well, better than most Republicans would in New York City, because he has a real presence there, and he's very familiar with it. So I think he's only got 32% of the vote. If he got 34%, he would have been the next governor. So I think Bruce might be the guy who can pick up that extra 2 points.
Congressman Peter King, thank you for coming on this Sunday morning, and let's catch up again real soon.
Absolutely, John. Thank you.
The Cats Roundtable.
With us today is Senator George Borrello. Well, George Borrello, what the heck is going on in Albany this week?
John, let me tell you, it's interesting to see. There are these people that believe that somehow Governor Kathy Hochul is going to stand up to Zohran Mamdani, but a recent exposure of the organizations that she has funded with taxpayer money to the tune of tens of millions of dollars really tells the story that she's two peas in a pod with Zohran Mamdani. I mean, she's funding groups that are looking to abolish ICE, to defund the police, to even eliminate the NYPD, as well as anti-Semitic organizations that are anti-Israel, and organizations that provide secret gender-affirming care, as it's called, to children as young as 13. So these are the groups that Kathy Hochul has so far sent about $60 million of our taxpayer money to, with another $55 million or so pledged. So this is a wake-up call for all New Yorkers, in my opinion, that we need change in Albany, that we need people that aren't going to bow down to the radical far left that is really taking over New York City in so many ways, and it's time for us to push back.
And give us a couple of examples of some of the items you're talking about.
There's an organization right now that is a DEI organization that essentially is trying to is funding folks that are working on everything from anti-Israel Muslim community associations to even Planned Parenthood and organizations. For example, $2.6 million to one Planned Parenthood here in the greater New York area. Meanwhile, here in Western New York, the governor spent $0 to uncover a domestic terror organization that firebombed a place called the Compass Group. The Compass Group is an organization that is a pro-life group that works with pregnant women at risk to try to provide them with free medical care. 3 years ago, that organization was firebombed, and here we are 3 years later, and no suspects, no arrest. It's still an unsolved crime, and Governor Hochul didn't even pay it but a few words and dedicated $0 to solving that domestic terror act that took place at the Compass Group in Amherst, New York. That's just a couple examples of what she's done. But right now, if you're looking at the money going forward, there's another $55 million that's about to be given out. It's time for people to speak up and say we do not want our taxpayer dollars going to organizations that are funding anti-Israel activities, DEI and other so-called social justice organizations, or organizations that are trying to eliminate the use of natural gas in New York State. She's funding organizations while telling people that she's going to suspend the natural gas ban that she has that was supposed to take effect January 1st.
Anything else you want to say this Sunday morning?
I would just say to the folks out there, we have an opportunity for change in this upcoming election year in 2026. I am confident that the people of New York will choose common sense over the radical far left. We are still a great state. We are still a strong state that is a financial epicenter of the world, and we need to elect people, common sense people, that want to ensure that New York State and New Yorkers can prosper. And we have that opportunity coming up in 2026.
Senator George Borrello, thank you for bringing us up to date, and we'll catch up with you again real soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Cats Roundtable. We'll be right back right after this break. Welcome back to the Cats Roundtable. The mayor has been in Israel and he's traveling. The acting mayor is Randy Mastro. Normally, you're just the first deputy mayor. Give us an update of all the things that are happening this week while you're the mayor.
Well, John, it has been a very active week. It started last Saturday. I attended the funeral of a fallen firefighter hero Patrick Brady in Queens. Then earlier this week, Monday morning, I was rushed to the scene at the hospital. A young police officer who was shot in the line of duty. Two other police officers rushing to the scene. There'd been a fatal shooting incident in Brownsville. The officer who was shot was using a shotgun. It was a bird shot. Unfortunately, it grazed the side of his face, so he was able to be released several hours later. But all three of these young officers, injured in the line of duty, and just reinforcing the dedication and the bravery and the sacrifice of our uniformed services. And then, Wednesday night, John, quite a shocking incident. One of our synagogues on the Upper East Side, Park East Synagogue, protests there that just devolved into unacceptable hate. And those protesters were too close to the entry to the synagogue. And they said some very vile things that never should have been that close, never should have gotten that to that stage. And it portends that we're going to have to find the right balance and make sure that we protect houses of worship and the right of people to practice. And in particular, since synagogues seem to be targeted, the right of Jews to be free from threats, terror, anti-Semitism, so that they can practice their religion in peace.
Unit that went in there was called the Strategic Reserve Unit of the NYPD?
In this particular instance, the permit and the setting up of the parameters and the pen where protesters should have been is handled by the local precinct. There were no physical injuries, but the psychic trauma for those who were going to that synagogue that night just to practice their religion. I mean, the vilest things were being said by these protesters.
And I know I had Rabbi Schneier's daughter on my show on Friday or Thursday, and the people that went there for their religion were terrified because they felt threatened. And that's why New York should not be like that. But what I'm concerned about, acting mayor, is the fact that the next mayor, the mayor-elect, has picked that unit out to defund, and that unit puts out all those kind of incidents.
Well, when things get out of control, that's why you have that kind of strategic task force. And this is something that, all should be reassessed in light of the reality that, it's one thing to be on a campaign trail and try and appeal to your base. It's another thing to actually be a mayor and protect all New Yorkers, not just your political base. And he's reappointed Commissioner Tisch to remain on the job. And the police should be allowed to do their jobs. The commissioner should be allowed to do her job. But when you have protesters literally allowed, and in this case, the police should have controlled that crowd more, okay, should have kept them farther away from the entrance. They were literally at the door of the synagogue shouting these protesters things like globalize the intifada and urging the, quote, resistance to take another settler out, and saying vile things like, we don't want no two-state solutions, we want the whole thing. And they were protesting about Gaza, Palestine, and Israel, yet they were targeting New York Jews who were simply going to a synagogue to practice their religion. That just is not acceptable in our city. We have to protect our houses of worship, and in particular, the targets of these protests are synagogues.
But I think St. Patrick's has been under attack, and sometimes the Catholic churches and all churches have to be watched, and the synagogues most of all.
Well, it is about protecting houses of worship. We should protect our children in our schools, and we should protect those who go to worship, whether they're going to worship in a synagogue, a cathedral, or a parish church, or going to a mosque. But we've seen these incidents more recently accelerating when it comes to synagogues, and we need to do something about it.
Understood. Anything else you want to tell the all New Yorkers? When is the mayor coming back?
The mayor will be back on Sunday night, and I just want to say, as these weeks wind down, I could not, have been more honored to serve these last 9 months and to serve this mayor and this administration. I think history will be very kind to Mayor Adams and his legacy, because crime is down to record lows. That's why his police commissioner got reappointed. Jobs are up to record highs. Let's see if the socialist administration can keep that up. And affordable housing, what the incoming, mayor ran on, has been produced at unprecedented record levels by this administration. Let's see if this socialist mayor can keep that up. I root for the city. I hope the city does well in the future. But the city has been well served. Crime down, jobs up, affordable housing produced at record levels by this mayor, Eric Adams.
Well, acting mayor Randy Mastro, you're going to be acting mayor until the mayor returns, and thank you for everything you've done and kept the city together. And people were looking towards you to have great operations in our city. And God bless you, and God bless New York, and we all hope that New York succeeds.
Thank you, John. Always a pleasure to be with you.
And with us today is George Venizelos, and he was the assistant director in charge of New York for 4 years for the FBI. He's also the executive director of the Federal Law Enforcement Foundation, and works very closely with the FBI, the current members, and all the other law enforcement agencies of our city. Tell us, there's been a lot of discussion around, because there's a lot of people concerned that the New Yorkers will be safe after some of the things that the mayor-elect has said. Mayor-elect Mondami has said about disbanding certain parts of the NYPD and maybe not appointing the best New York criminal judges to the bench. You tell us your discussions with the powers that be in the federal law enforcement.
There is a lot of concern. I think that the one positive thing that happened this week is the retention of Commissioner Tisch. I think she's been a great commissioner, and I think that will continue. And she has great relations with the federal agencies, which is important. I think what's going to happen, or what is happening already, is the federal agencies have really stepped it up big time in these areas, in these cities that are having problems, and they will do the same in New York. The violent crimes have been a problem, quality of life have been a problem. People don't feel safe in the streets, so they're putting a full court press on all the big cities. like Chicago and Washington and Memphis and New York will be no different. I think the big concern is that the local governments, people are getting arrested but not going to jail. So in the federal system, they're going to go to jail. Like the FBI had an initiative this summer that was called Summer Heat, where they hit all the violent crime cities with the biggest problems. And in the last 7 months, they've arrested 28,000 people with violent crimes. Also in the top 10, the FBI's top 10 most wanted people, 4 out of the 10 have been captured this year. So they've really stepped it up. And I think that they will do no different in New York.
I understand when talking to the U.S. Attorney or talking to the FBI that when there's violent criminals, career criminals acting with weapons, there's federal laws that they are violating, and the federal authorities go in and make the arrest instead of depending on the local authorities.
Yeah, the federal system. I mean, they're not going to be released. There is no such thing as no bail in the federal system, so they're going to be held. And you know, the U.S. Attorney, we're very fortunate. We have a great U.S. Attorney in the Southern District, Jay Clayton's, probably going to be one of the best, if not already the best U.S. attorneys in the country. And they've already had a small example. Washington Square Park had a big drug problem for years. People couldn't even walk through the park. And they went in there and did an operation and cleaned it up. They made all these arrests in one day. And these people went to jail, and the ones that had guns and stuff, they're not being let out. They're going to jail.
They do much more time than they do on the local authorities.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, you know, they have sentencing guidelines. You know, the judges can't let them off. There's guidelines that go with the different crimes. And if you're a violent crime, you're going to jail. You're definitely going to jail. And I think that's it. I really have to commend this administration and also the leaderships of the different federal agencies. They're stepping it up big time with the violent crime area. They're prioritizing it. We had a great speaker this week, the head of DEA, Frank Tarantino. He spoke about what DEA is doing with the drug problems. DEA is really stepping it up. DEA is doing an incredible job of taking drugs off the street. Fentanyl, prioritizing fentanyl. And then you have ICE doing a great job with all the criminals that were led in the country that are being arrested. So the federal agencies have really stepped up, and we have to keep stepping it up and step up even more because we have to get our cities back, because especially with the DAs who aren't doing the job that they should be doing, it's time for the federal government to step up and fill that gap.
George Venizelos, thank you for filling us in, and let's do this more often, and because people are concerned.
No, I would love that. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be on this show.
The Cats Roundtable.
What's happening in New York City? With us today is Jesse Arms, and he's the vice president of the Manhattan Institute. Well, Jessica Tisch decided to stay with the mayor-elect. Give us your interpretation.
It's very interesting, and it's ultimately good news for New York City. Jesse Tisch is a smart NYPD commissioner, and this leaves open the question of, so what does that mean for Zohran Mamdani? During the late stages of Mamdani's campaign, he was looking to hire or give his candidacy a more moderate veneer, and what he did was he said, I'm going to keep Jesse Tisch on, to stop the freak out, and maybe some of the establishment folks in the city would say, let's give this guy a chance. Jesse Tisch is very popular. She's well-liked. She's a competent pro. And this is a little bit of a surprise because the DSA crowd, the kind of crazy left crowd that thinks Zohran Mamdani is all the rage, is not a fan of a competent and serious police commissioner like Jesse Tisch, who Zohran Mamdani has been talking about defunding and putting folks like Tisch out of a job since he was like 18 years old. So this is a change, and it's a welcome one, and it raises questions about what it is that Jesse Tisch secured in concessions from Mamdani in order to stay on.
There was an incident. There was an incident last week at Rabbi Schneier's synagogue, and the strategic task force of the NYPD brought it back into under control. But
Absolutely.
why is Mayor-elect Mondani pointing towards that strategic task force to discontinue them? Who's going to take care of big crowds?
I mean, this is crazy, and that might be one of those concessions that Jesse Tisch secured in agreeing to stay on with Mamdani. Look, despite the two holding sharply opposing views on almost every major policing issue, Mamdani wants to get rid of gang enforcement. He wants to shrink the force's size. He wants to get rid of the Strategic Response Group, which did invaluable work just the other day, as you were saying, John. The disciplinary direction of cops, state-level criminal justice reforms. Mamdani campaigned on keeping Tisch to signal his moderation. So now the question is, does that promise may now give her real leverage? Firing her would be politically disastrous for Mamdani, and losing her would remove the main institutional check on Mamdani's most radical public safety ideas. So I think what we're seeing in this arrangement is maybe there's something unstable about it, but Tisch's decision to stay might force Mamdani to moderate rather than go the other way around, because the truth is she's got him in the pole position now, and if he pushes her out, forces her to resign, well, Mamdani's just created his chief political rival, an extremely popular, pragmatic figure from everyone to the mainstream left to the far right in New York City, and yeah, he'll be looking at, very possibly, his next challenger 4 years later if anything goes awry in that relationship.
Well, Jesse, then it's the responsibility of Governor Hochul to keep an eye on things and keep their finger on it, and President Trump to control the money.
It's not just that. I'll say one more thing, John. With respect to those scenes you saw outside of the Park East Synagogue the other night that were horrible and odious, and I hope we won't, but we might see more of them under a Mayor Mamdani who's kind of fanned the flames of anti-Semitism throughout his campaign. There is something the federal government can do, and we know that Trump and Mamdani are in communication now. There's something called the FACE Act, and that authorizes the Department of Justice to bring a civil suit against anyone who obstructs a house of worship trying to intimidate people out of going in to exercise their religion. It's a tool in the president's pocket, and I believe he knows it.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, and let's keep your eyes on things, and we'll talk again real soon.
Great to be with you, John. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Cats Roundtable. We'll be right back right after this break. Welcome back to the Cats Roundtable. With us is Steve Cates, otherwise known as Dr. Sky, and he enlightens us on a Sunday morning from the moon to Mars. Dr. Sky, what do you think?
Well, good morning, John. We want to wish everybody, of course, the best for a great and happy Thanksgiving as we move into that time of the seasons and the time of the year. But, John, let's go out to outer space and talk about China's space program. This is very interesting. The Chinese, about a few weeks ago, John, sent a 2-watt laser signal from what we call geosynchronous orbit. That's where all the big satellites that we see, if we could look out in space, the Earth would have this big ring like Saturn of satellites. And the reason I'm mentioning this is this 2-watt signal from the laser sent down about a gigabyte, per second of data, which outpaces what Starlink has for the ability to, operate from the realm of space with that low wattage, John. That's incredible. We're sending data over a laser light beam. Isn't that quite amazing?
2 watts. I mean, 2 watts, a 9-volt battery will give you more.
Probably. I mean, that's amazing. And that's, John, from 22,000 miles up in space, which is incredible. And the beat goes on with China. We talked about a week or so ago that the Chinese, as they called them, not astronauts, but ticonauts, space travelers, would be stranded on board the big space station that they have, the Tiangong. Well, we find out that here's the situation. They have had 2 of these escape modules attached. They just had a new crew come up on the Shenzhou 21, and they would have the other 3 astronauts that were to come down on the Shenzhou 20. But they found out that something smacked the glass and the windshield of the Shenzhou 20, so they didn't want to risk it. And what was that possibility, John? It was some kind of space debris. And remember, when the space shuttle was operating, a tiny fleck of paint actually traveling at 17,000 miles an hour literally compromised one of the windows on the shuttle. So to make it, even quicker and understandable, the astronauts came down, the 3 astronauts, on the Shenzhou 21, which leaves the new astronauts up there, or Tikonauts, with no usable spacecraft to come down anytime soon. So the 3 came down, but that's amazing, John. A small amount of something, maybe a micrometeor, or in the case of the shuttle, can you imagine that? A tiny little speck of something traveling that fast could compromise your entire mission, especially if you're looking through a window. That's
I think that's a very serious problem because how do you protect all that crap flying around from broken satellites, from broken other stuff that's been up there? We've been shooting satellites up there for 50, 60 years already.
You're right, John.
That's the nicest way you can say it. There's a lot of crap up there.
You're absolutely right. And you're saying it in a very interesting way, as direct as it is. Common sense would tell us that we have so many spacecraft up there, some of which have been destroyed. But, John, wouldn't this maybe a simple solution? While you have those little modules attached with the glass windows, just have some coverings, like if you had an expensive camera lens, you would, by necessity, to protect it, just put a cover over it so that at least it's shielded. So maybe common sense has to go there, and when you're ready to come down, you pop it off, and you hopefully return, and you come back safely.
Steve Cates, otherwise known as Dr. Sky, thank you for enlightening us, and thank you for keeping our minds going.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. And with us today is Rocco Lasatorsa, and he is the CEO of the New York State Energy Coalition. Tell us what's going on in heating our homes, our apartment buildings, etc.
Okay. John, first of all, thanks for having me back. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss this with you and your listeners today. It is good news. I'm kind of cautiously optimistic, though, with this, because we don't know if this is going to be a permanent situation or if this, as you said, is going to be, until after the election. The governor did, pull back on this, electrification, act. She's getting a lot of pushback from environmental groups and so on. But I'm seeing, moderate Democrats and even and Republicans saying that, this is going too fast, too far too fast, and that we need to really reevaluate this in terms of affordability for people. And it's going to impact more so, people in low-income homes than it will, anyone else. We're seeing natural gas prices rise, as a result of different factors and so forth, and electricity rates as well. We've seen them going up all over the place, across the state, across the country. So this is something that has to get resolved. It has to get resolved on a permanent basis, though. And for 2 decades now, we have been lowering emissions with heating oil by using biodiesel, as you well know. Right now, the mandate in New York State is 10%. It goes to 20% in 2030. But many of our dealers are, doing much more than that right now because, they know that it's good for business. It's good for their consumers as well. So we've done a good job here helping reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And the governor herself said that, we need an all-of-the-above approach to our climate situation. And part of that all-of-the-above approach.
In the last few years, people were pushing electric energy.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a coalition that was pushing electric energy? Because I understand we don't have the electric energy, and that's one of the reasons that the governor has pulled back.
Well, it's the environmental groups that were pushing, for this, with the CLCPA and so forth that she signed, and I think that was Cuomo who created the CLCPA, but I think it was not well thought out. I mean, that's my opinion anyway, in terms of how this was going to work. We don't have the supply, and with AI, it's coming on as fast as it is right now, and all of these AI centers being built is even a bigger drain on the grid right now. So factor all of that in, and imagine every home in New York and business being on electricity. We'll have blackouts all over the place people will be freezing in their homes in the wintertime, and there'll be no air conditioning for them. So it's a proposition that really needs to be thought out a lot further. And one more thing, when they talk about electric heat pumps, to take an oil or a gas furnace out of someone's home and replace it with a heat pump, you're talking about cost of at a minimum of about $25,000. Why would you do that when someone who's burning heating oil is using already a fuel that is good for the environment, that's lowering greenhouse gas emissions, as I said earlier? It's more efficient, it's cleaner, and it's much better for the environment. So.
There must have been somebody pushing electric energy, some coalitions, and someday you'll be able, maybe if we do our research, to find out who exactly it was and the reason, because a lot of the electricity is made by fossil fuels.
Correct.
Well, Rocco, I look forward to having you more often, and please look into it.
Well, anytime you want me back, I'm happy to come on. Happy to talk to you, John.
Well, stay in touch. Thank you, Rocco.
Be well. Take care.
The Cats Roundtable.
What's going on in the markets? What's going on in the stock market? With us today is John Terrett, like he's with us every week. John, give us a report.
Well, what a week it's been, John. And, of course, the big story was NVIDIA, the chip maker, with their third quarter earnings. Profits up by about 60%. All their chips sold out, except for some of the older ones. And their fourth quarter forecast was pretty good, coming at $65 billion. And so on Wednesday evening, NVIDIA shares were up by about 5%. And they were up early on Thursday as well. But then between 10:30 and 12:30, they simply rolled over. And by the end of Thursday, NVIDIA was down by about 3%, bringing all the sector down and the markets down as well, in a way that we have seldom seen on Wall Street. And the problem is that when the earnings came out, everybody thought, wow, thank goodness there is no AI bubble, at least not yet. But Wall Street, thinking about things, is still concerned about the pace of AI development, which NVIDIA excels in. And Wall Street's concerned that it can't be sustained, which NVIDIA says it can. Of course, the other big story of the week was the September jobs report coming out on an unusual jobs Thursday, something for everyone in my view. If you think the economy is hot, then we added 119,000 jobs in September. If you're worried about the economy, then you look at the 4.4% unemployment rate that we have now. And the issue here is that all of this reduces the chance of an interest rate cut in December, which is why money comes out of tech and goes into things like healthcare, which is up about 18% for the year so far. Talking of healthcare, Eli Lilly, based in Indiana, has become the first American drug company to reach the $1 trillion market cap. And the other big story, of course, was Walmart, with their earnings on Thursday. Shares up about 6.5% on Thursday. They beat with their sales and their earnings. They boosted their forecast. But very bad news for the New York Stock Exchange and ICE, the company that runs it. They'll be spitting tax at the junction of Wall and Broad, because Walmart, which is our component, remember, is leaving the NYC in December and going to the NASDAQ because it thinks that the NASDAQ is better facilitated to look after technology companies, and Walmart thinks its future is as a technology company. Crypto story of the week, crypto lawyer Karan Dara is running for New York State Attorney General, challenging Letitia James, and Bitcoin's down to around $80,000 per token now, 84 on Thursday, and it's down about 42,000 from its highs just a couple of months ago. And so, John, in the week ahead, holiday shortened week, Thanksgiving Thursday, Black Friday and Small Business Saturday. Go out and support your mom and pop businesses. It's very important. Happy Thanksgiving, by the way, my friend. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family.
Thank you, and thank you for the update, and we'll catch up again soon.
See you next week. Thanks, John.
The Cats Roundtable.
If you ever miss a segment or want to hear it again, go to WABCRadio.com, go to podcasts, go to minicast, and play back your favorite segment. Thank you for being with us for the Cats Roundtable Local Edition, the #1 show on Sunday mornings in New York. Keep listening to us for the Cats Roundtable National Edition between 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock. So we'll be back to you in a few minutes after the news.